A humanitarian mission becomes a battle of wits as the Enterprise encounters a gang of dangerous space pirates in Star Trek Strange New Worlds' first season 7th episode, The Serene Squall. But what happened? What did I like, and what didn't I like so much? Before I get into this recap and review, please note this video contains spoilers, so if you've not yet seen this episode or any of Strange New Worlds' first season, this might not be the video for you. Let's warp into this! From a post at a Vulcan Rehabilitation Center to Pring contacts Spock, surprising him with news that she has been conducting research into human sexuality as a way to better understand his mixed ancestry. Spock is appreciative but suggests they continue her research when they are next together. Spock and Nurse Chapel are en route to Pike's quarters for a dinner party. Distracted by his earlier interaction, Spock confesses to Chapel that he is having some challenges with T'Pring, uncertain of her attempts to explore his human side. In Pike's quarters, the crew get to know their guest, Dr. Aspen, a former counselor turned humanitarian who has been leading aid missions to colonists on the edge of Federation space, a region Pike likens to the Wild West. Una mentions the Serene Squall, an infamous pirate ship feared for its raids along the border. Spock suggests the Enterprise should be more than a match for any raiders, but Dr. Aspen urges caution, claiming the crew of the Serene Squall's loyalty makes them dangerous. The Enterprise arrives at the border to meet a number of colonial ships, but instead discover debris, signs of another raid. Aspen doesn't believe the colonists possessed anything of value, but La'an suggests the pirates may have captured survivors to sell into slavery, something she notes is common outside Federation space. Spock reminds the bridge that entry into non-Federation space requires Starfleet approval. Noting the risks, Pike nonetheless orders a pursuit course, promising Aspen that they will find and rescue the captured colonists. Much like they did earlier in the season, the show leans on downtime in Pike's cabin to get us up to speed, not only with the situation, but also our guest, who is a central player in this week's episode. All in all, it's a pretty tight scene, another positive sign that modern Trek television writers are indeed still very capable of the episodic format where a lot of exposition needs to be front-loaded. What I didn't like though, and honestly it almost tanks the entire segment, was the revelation that the Enterprise needs permission to venture outside Federation space. This flies in the face of not only what we know about Star Trek's overarching premise of space exploration, but also this show's freaking title. Who wrote this? Couldn't they have just used, I don't know, some sort of spatial anomaly to cloud communications and up the ante that way? Surely it would have been better than what we got here, a tiny throwaway line, but one that really took me out of the show for a good minute or two. The Enterprise detects a distress call from inside an asteroid field, presumably from the colonists. Dr. Aspen advises pirates have used similar tricks before and urges caution. The Enterprise moves inside the asteroid field, but in doing so triggers an electromagnetic net which begins to shrinking on the ship. With Aspen's help, as well as Pike suggesting he go with his gut, Spock identifies a weakness in the net and disables it. Unbeknownst to the Enterprise, however, a small vessel detaches from one of the asteroids and begins to pursue. Aspen visits Spock in his quarters and the two engage in conversation about Spock's dual ancestry and struggles to balance his human and Vulcan natures. Spock is impressed by Aspen's knowledge, who reveals they worked with Vulcans previously. Aspen explains that all species try to put things into boxes and suggests Spock consider himself as something more than just human or Vulcan. The Enterprise encounters a colony ship containing over 200 life signs in its cargo hold, which Aspen theorizes are the captured colonists, suggesting the Serene Squall have hijacked the ship. Pike leads a mission to the colony ship, hoping to take the pirates by surprise, but beam into an empty cargo bay and a device sending out false sensor readings. Pike reports this back to the Enterprise, and Una attempts to beam them back, but their signal is suddenly disrupted. Elsewhere on the ship, Chapel hears shouting and weapons fire rapidly approaching and escapes by climbing into a Xaverius tube. Spock reports the ship has been infiltrated by pirates and several are approaching the bridge. The bridge defends against the invaders, who take out the crew, including Ortegas and Una, who locks the ship before being captured. Caught in a firefight, Aspen is hit but is saved by Spock, who escapes with them in a turbo lift. Back aboard the colony ship, Pike and the away team are quickly captured by the pirates, whose leader, an Orion named Remy, chuckles as he welcomes the captain to the Serene Squall. The scene with Aspen and Spock raised an eyebrow, pun intended. A lot of it went over my head initially, but on a second watch, now knowing the truth of Aspen's character, the philosophy of what they were attempting to get through to Spock made more sense. Having said that, I don't think it was necessary, as the show has already covered Spock's duality only 2 weeks ago, with that episode concluding with Spock accepting himself as simply Spock. This feels like a character regression, and quite honestly, a bit of a retread of material we've already explored recently. With Strange New Worlds running the classic Trek playbook, it was only a matter of time before we got to the ship gets taken over by an inferior enemy trope. We've seen this before, most notably in TNG's Rascals, Enterprise's Chosen Realm, and Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, to name just a few of the many instances where this happens.
Swords and spears? How did these guys get on board?
Remy and his crew interrogate Pike, attempting to gain the access code to unlock the Enterprise. Noticing a lack of harmony surrounding Remy's cooking, Pike offers to show the pirates what real food tastes like, offering to discuss command codes over dinner. Remy isn't keen on that proposal, but relents when another member of the crew speaks up in Pike's favour. Pike's meal goes down well with the pirates. Remy and Pike go back and forth, with Remy suggesting the captain and his crew be sold to the Klingons as slave labour, something Pike notices doesn't go down too well with the Squall's crew. Pike is thrown into a cell, reuniting with Una, Leanne, Mbenga, and Ortegas. Pike theorizes the crew of the Serene Squall aren't as united as they were led to believe. Una then realizes Pike's plan and explains to her confused crewmates that Pike intends to influence a mutiny amongst the pirates. Back on the Enterprise, Spock and Aspen reach sickbay, where Spock tends to the Doctor's phaser wound. Spock is intent on retaking the ship, but Aspen fears the pirates, revealing the Squall attacked her husband, a Vulcan who was leading an aid mission in the area previously. The two make their way to engineering, arriving to discover Chapel, who has also made her own way to access the computer to send a distress signal. Spock uses his command codes to release the lockdown and attempts to transfer control of the ship to engineering, but instead control is suddenly rerouted to the bridge. Aspen, holding both theirs and Spock's phasers, now points them at Spock and Chapel, revealing their true identity as Angel, the real captain of the Squall, and also now the Enterprise. The reveal of Aspen as the villain of the week was both surprising and ultimately disappointing. It was a clever and manipulative twist, but I wasn't a fan of where the show went with Aspen, who, following the reveal, immediately morphed into a schlocky villain type, one that also came with the same unfortunate queer-baiting tendencies, strongly reminiscent of fellow Leather fans Mirror Universe Kira and Emperor Giorgio. I honestly thought we were done with this as a thing in Star Trek. There was no reason for Angel to regress into this one-dimensional character. They already had agency and motive, the same drive to do what they feel is justified that almost always results in a complicated and thus superior antagonist. There was serious potential with this character, and its squandering is the episode's biggest failing. Now in control of the ship, Angel details their plan to Spock and Chapel on the bridge. They reveal the colonists were a ruse designed to lure and capture not only the Enterprise, but also Spock, who Angel specifically wants for something. Back at the Vulcan Rehabilitation Center, T'Pring is contacted by Angel, who proposes trading Spock for a Vulcan associate of theirs called Xaverius, who is being held at the center. T'Pring objects as such a trade would jeopardize her career, but Angel stands firm, reminding her of her bond with Spock. With little choice, T'Pring provides coordinates to Angel, who reveals to Spock that while they had lied about their identity, they weren't entirely deceitful with their Vulcan husband, not lost to pirates, but to T'Pring's rehabilitation center instead. On the Squall, Pike sets his plans in motion, loudly conversing with his crew in a way that soon draws the attention of a female pirate, who reveals Remy isn't actually the captain. Pike and the captive crew continue to manipulate the pirate, who orders them to finish their meal before walking away. Pike and Una slyly smirk at each other, confident they've done enough to stir up trouble. Angel and the Enterprise rendezvous with T'Pring aboard a Vulcan cruiser at her coordinates. Spock, having deduced the identity of the Vulcan prisoner, tells T'Pring not to go ahead with the transfer, but is shot by Angel, who warns T'Pring that the next blast would be a fatal one. A highlight of the episode was pretty much everything with Pike and the pirates. Don't get me wrong, I still had issues, which I'll get onto in a bit, but for the most part, I found these scenes succeeded, bringing the right amount of silly, borderline campy fun to the more serious developments happening on the Enterprise. The inclusion of Una in these scenes was also very welcome, with Rebecca Romaine feeling a little sidelined since her focused episode earlier in the season. Here you also really get a sense of history between her and the captain, with mention of Alpha Braga feeling like something ripped out of Doctor Who's Doctor Companion past adventure banter. Recovering from Angel's phaser blast, Spock whispers to Chapel, asking her to follow his lead. Spock rises and confesses to Pring that he is given into his human side and is having an affair with Nurse Chapel. Angel suspects a ruse to prevent the exchange, but Spock continues, now joined by Chapel, who also plays along, admitting the infidelity. The two then kiss passionately, prompting T'Pring to release Spock from their bond. With their plan now ruined, Angel orders the Enterprise to fire onto Pring's ship, but the Serene Squall, now under Pike's command with its crew in disarray due to an ongoing mutiny, arrives and opens fire, with Una using a backdoor code to lock the Enterprise's shields and weapons. Defeated, Angel admits to Spock having enjoyed meeting him, knowing of him through Xaverius. Angel also advises Spock to reject the idea of choosing to be either human or Vulcan before beaming to their ship, the small craft seen earlier following the Enterprise. Later in his quarters, Spock reunites with T'Pring, who, much to his surprise, commends him on his earlier deception and his human side, which she believes was a source of strength in this instance. T'Pring suggests they perform a rebonding ritual, which Spock agrees is logical. In sickbay, Spock approaches Chapel and thanks the nurse for her help. Chapel appears conflicted, but knowing Spock's situation and commitments to T'Pring, feels she knows there are no feelings between them. Before Spock leaves, Chapel mentions the Vulcan Angel mentioned. Spock recalls things said by Angel earlier, leaving him to conclude that the prisoner isn't really Xaverius, but is actually Sybok, his half-brother who he has been told to avoid at all costs. Back at the Vulcan Rehabilitation Center, T'Pring approaches Sybok's cell, who begins to turn to meet her. I never thought we'd see the day, but here we are, 30 years later, and Sybok is once again an active part of Star Trek. What a time to be alive. Those who know me know that I'm a bit of a Final Frontier apologist. I know it's crap, but like every Star Trek movie that isn't Into Darkness, I can't help but love it. Sybok was actually a large reason for that love, an intriguing character whose ability to help people confront their pain made for the film's better moments. Some will probably hate the inclusion of the character here, but I love that Strange New Worlds is giving us these deep cuts into Star Trek lore. While I get it can be difficult to effectively wrap up standalone episodes, the conclusion here felt particularly rushed, with no resistance from the pirates to Pike retaking the Enterprise, and a mutiny scene that was also completely overlooked. Now, while I recognise and accept that this was done for comedic purposes, I think the humorous impact would have deepened with something like a quick, minute-long montage showing the pirates spreading discontent like Chinese whispers, leading to a female pirate punching Remy to initiate a shipwide brawl. Something like this would have given these scenes a richer payoff, and not to mention actual resolutions to characters that we were introduced to. Finally, I don't really have much to say about the Spock, Chapel, T'Pring scene. It was fine, it's teen soap opera stuff that we've seen before on Star Trek, but it's never been something that I've held much interest in. Credit where credit's due, the scenes were well acted, with Jess Bush in particular doing a really good job selling Chapel's inner conflict as her feelings for Spock continue to slowly grow. I really wanted to like this episode. Strange New Worlds so far has wowed with some of Trek's finest small screen outings of this era, and as such has built up a solid degree of goodwill, but this episode just didn't work for me. It's a fun, silly hour, and definitely comes with some positives and developments that might factor into the show's finale or future episodes. But these positives aside, the show ultimately disappointed with inconsistent pacing, a soap opera heavy plot, and an initially promising villain severely lacking in depth and gravitas. And yes, my biggest complaint, yar matey, not nearly enough space pirate action, yar. I'm giving the Serene Squall 2.5 stars out of 5. But what did you think of this episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rate it? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Star Trek reviews, recaps, lore, theories, and more coming soon. Until next time, I'm the TrekLad. Live long and prosper.